everyone. I know I haven't posted any videos in a long time on YouTube, but my life has changed since my last few videos of high school. I had graduated in 2018, sorry. And after I had graduated, I was working at some place like a daycare for kids that have special needs. And I haven't been working there for a year yet, and I meet a guy, and his name is Chad, and we were together for, we had just started dating, so we were together for 4 months, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, and we had found out that I was pregnant. And after I had found out that I was pregnant, I told my boss at work, I was like, hey, I'm pregnant, just to let you know, this is stuff that could be happening while I'm pregnant. I had really bad morning sickness. She had asked me if I had started throwing up or anything yet. I was like, no, not yet, but I know that it's going to start happening soon. But when that time came, I was sick like that every single day. There wasn't a day that had gone by where I was not feeling sick. And there was days that it was so bad that I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go and clean the house or anything. I couldn't do anything. And then during all that, after I found out January 13th, which was a Sunday of 2019, and my mom was listening into a conversation that I was having with one of my friends. I was telling them how I was pregnant and how, I was nervous to tell my mom, but I wasn't sure how I was going to tell her. And obviously, I told my boyfriend right away that I was pregnant. I wasn't going to hold that back on him. I told him immediately. I texted him because I didn't know if he was working or not. So I texted him and I told him that we needed to talk. But my mom told me my mom had asked me, are you on the phone with a friend right now? I was like, yes, I am. She's like, hang up the phone. We need to talk. So I was like, okay. So I went in her room. I hung up the phone, went into her room, and we started talking. Well, it was more of her yelling at me because I had literally just gone into the bathroom and found out that I was pregnant 3 minutes before she started yelling at me. So then she got done yelling at me. I ate dinner, went to bed. I wasn't feeling good anyway, so I just went to bed. I had to work the next morning. The next day, I got ready for work and everything, went to work, and I told my boss and all that. It was a Monday. And my mom had came and picked me up from work. I went to work. I rode my electric scooter that I had paid $300 for. Went into work on that, was charging it, and my mom picked me up and took me home. While we were in the car, she was yelling at me the whole way to where we needed to go. And when we got to where we were going, before we went into the store, we went into the pet store. But before we went into the pet store, she sat there and told me, well, you need to figure out what you're doing. You need to figure out if you're going to keep the baby or give it up for adoption or abort it or get the hell out. So I flat out told her. I was mad. I was pretty much mad about it. Any person that's about to be a mom that is in their early 20s, they're gonna be mad at their parent for being mad at them for being pregnant at the age that they are. I got pregnant at 22. I'm 23 now. But when I had found out that I was pregnant, I was only 22. And my fiance now, who's the father of my child, he was only 20. Or 21. I'm sorry, he was 21. So he wasn't even 22 yet. And he was going to be a dad at 21, 22. And so my mom telling me that I had to abort my child, I was pissed, and I told her, you know what? No, I'm not going to. I was crying in the process because she had just got done yelling at me. So at that time, I was very emotional. When you're pregnant, you're very emotional. It doesn't matter if you're mad at someone, you'll start crying. But when I was sitting there with my mom and she was yelling at me and she was done yelling at me, I straight up told her, I said, well, I'm keeping the baby. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not giving it up. I'm not aborting the baby or anything like that. Like, she flat out told me right then and there, it doesn't have a heartbeat, so you can abort it if you need to, you know. She's like, I feel like you should abort it. And in my opinion, that was weird, because right after I had found out, she had told me, she's like, well, if you decide to keep it, I'm on your side. If you decide to put it up for adoption, I'm on your side. She told me, she's like, I'm not okay with aborting. So obviously you would either keeping or giving it up for adoption. And my decision was, I'm keeping the baby. Like, me and my fiance talked about it. There was no giving it up. There was none of that. We wanted to keep the baby. Not because, you know, we were having arguments or fights or anything like that. No, like, we were only together for like 4 weeks and we found out that I was pregnant. It happened fairly quickly. It was something that I was not expecting. I thought I had like a normal period and everything, but then I went back and I was thinking about it and I was like, it wasn't even normal. Like, it was super light, and that's when I realized that it was implantation bleeding, basically. And then I thought about it more and I was like, okay, yeah, so the cravings that I was having and stuff like that made more sense to me after I had found out that I was pregnant. And so I get kicked out of my house, basically, with my mom. And I told my fiance that, you know, I was like, hey, babe, look, my mom's kicking me out. He's like, don't worry, pack up as much as you can pack up and take with you right now. And my sister and my stepdad will be there shortly. So I said, okay. So I had a bag of clothes and all that ready to go. And as soon as they got there, I brought out the bags outside, and then they just put them in the truck for me. And then I got in the car, and then we went back to their house. We ate dinner, and the first night that I was there, we had Little Caesars pizza, and of course, I couldn't eat Little Caesars pizza. Immediately after it went down, it came right back up again. So I ended up asking my fiance to go and get me something else to eat. So he went and got me something else to eat. I ate it. We sat and chit-chatted for a while, and then I went to sleep because I was tired, exhausted. I had been crying. I was tired. I wanted to go to sleep. So I went to sleep. Next morning, I woke up, got ready for work, went to work at the time that I was supposed to go to work. I had to give his sister gas money because she didn't have any gas in her car, and I needed to get to work, and I worked in Chandler in Arizona. And then I was talking to my dad back and forth about what had happened and everything, and my dad was excited to be a grandpa. Like, he was just like, well, if you guys need to move out here, you can move out here. I'll help you take care of the baby if you need. Whatever you need, I'll help you. I'm right there for it. You know, he was all for it. So, of course, I went ahead and I was talking to my fiance, because we were talking about coming out here to Wisconsin to visit for 4th of July. Like, I wanted to see my family. I missed my family out here. I missed my dad. I missed my cousins. I missed everybody. And I just wanted to be out here for my family. So what ended up happening was, like, close to the end of the month of, March or something like that, we decided to come out here. I had asked my fiance, I was like, babe, do you want to move there and, like, stay there? He didn't even answer my question. He just started packing up all of our stuff. Like, left off the stuff that we needed for the few days or whatever, because it took my dad about 2 days to get to Arizona from Wisconsin. And basically had said yes, like, let's go. You know, if it's gonna be better for our family, let's go. So we moved out here. I was 13 weeks pregnant, and I had my last doctor's appointment out there. I got to see the ultrasound and all that blah blah blah. Doctor told me about the baby and all that fun stuff. And then we came immediately out here. Got here, and right after moving out here, I didn't have any issues or anything, but because it was summer out here, it was hot, so I was always wearing like tank tops and stuff like that. My belly was always showing, and it progressively got bigger and bigger as the time went on. Finally, it came to where I was about 30 weeks. Thing was going good. 34 weeks, good. 35 weeks come. I was 35 weeks, and I believe like 3 days or 4 days, I started having contractions. I didn't know that I was having contractions until it was almost too late. Like, I was sitting on my bed, which is where I'm sitting right now. I'm in my room sitting on my bed, and he wasn't moving at all, so I started to get a little worried. And because he wasn't moving and I was having really bad pain in like my lower part of my belly, my back, it was cramping, I couldn't breathe, and so I called my dad's girlfriend and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. She's like, well, go ahead, call in, see what they want you to do. So I called in. They wanted me to go, and they're like, come in as soon as you can possibly come in. I was like, okay. So I called my dad's girlfriend back, and I told him, I was like, I need to, as soon as you guys get here, don't even come upstairs, stay in the car, I'm coming downstairs, and we're going straight to the hospital. They're like, okay, no biggie. So we go to the hospital. They hook me up to all the machines that they're supposed to hook you up to, and it turned out that I was having contractions, and I was actually dilated to 2 centimeters. And so because of that, they told me, well, just in case, we're going to give you a shot for his lungs, because they weren't sure if he was going to try and come at 35 weeks exactly, like 35 weeks and 4 days or whatever, or 3 days, whatever it was. They weren't sure if he was going to try and come that night or not. So they were like, well, we're going to give you a shot and everything, and then we'll see if the doctor wants you to stay or not, and if not, we'll just send you home. So that's exactly what they did. They gave me the shot and everything for his lungs, and they asked the doctor, do you want her to stay or do you want her to go home? And they told me, well, the doctor's like, if the contractions have stopped, send her home. The contractions had stopped, they sent me home. They told me, don't overdo it, try to take it a little easy, you know, and just be like that. So for like the first day after that whole mess, I came home, went to sleep, woke up the next morning about between 10:30 and 11, and I get a phone call, and it's from the hospital. They're like, well, can you try to come in kind of early, because I was supposed to go back at like 6 p.m. to get the other shot for his lungs. There's 2 shots of those I gotta get, and the first one was that night, and then the second one was gonna be that next day, like later on that night. They had called me and asked me if I could come in early. They're like, well, we just want to monitor and make sure that, you know, the contractions didn't come back or anything like that. So I was like, okay. So I went down there, and immediately they started saying, well, the contractions are coming back again. We're going to try and stop them again for the second time. And they weren't like strong contractions, which was nice, but they were still there. And they didn't want me to go into labor yet because of me being only 35 weeks and so many days. So I went back. They gave me the shot in my leg later on that night. And then they told me, you know, if everything's all good the next morning, they might be able to send me home. Well, they weren't able to. And when they had checked my pelvis again, they told me that I was dilated to 3 centimeters. So I was like, oh, great. So they ended up sending me that next day, they sent me to Rockford, which is in Illinois. It's like between Illinois and Wisconsin. So they sent me to that hospital out there. I go there, and well, first I asked them, I was like, why are you guys sending me up that way? And they're like, because they have a really good NICU area. And I was like, okay, makes sense. So they sent me there. I get there, they have me re-hooked up to everything. They're monitoring me. And they're like, everything looks pretty good so far. And I was like, okay. They're like, well, if you're hungry, you can order food or whatever. So I did. I was hungry, so I ordered food. They're like, we're just keeping you here for like a couple days just to monitor you and the baby, make sure that, you're not gonna go into labor. And if you do, we have everything set up. They wanted to weigh the baby, everything, make sure that the baby was even okay to even come out, make sure that the organs were even working. So they did all that on the ultrasound. At 35 weeks and like 4 days or whatever, 4 or 5 days, he was already 5 pounds 6 ounces. So if he would have been born, he would have been fine. They told me, they're like, because he's at the weight that he needs to be, he'd be able to go home with you the next day if he was to be born now. I was like, okay. And they're like, and because you had the shots for his lungs, he probably wouldn't really need the NICU. He'd probably be okay. And they were worried that he was gonna have jaundice really bad, which is like where the skin is yellow looking. He didn't have any of that. But when they were doing the ultrasound though, they were telling me, well, we're kind of worried that he'll have jaundice if he's born now. And I was like, okay, which could happen at 35 weeks, being born early and all that. But then I was fine. I was still in like quote unquote active labor, but I wasn't actually going into labor. It was just the contractions were so far apart that I didn't need to go in or anything. Like, I still had the cramping occasionally, but it didn't always happen, which was nice. So then when I hit 36 weeks and one day, during the day, I was fine, doing my normal stuff. A family friend of ours texted me, and it was her, it was his wife or girlfriend's or whatever's birthday. So they had asked me if they could come over, and they asked me if I could make my tinfoil dinners, which is basically meat and whatever I threw together just into a tin and thrown in the oven for so many minutes. So I do that, and after making dinner and making a cake, they had bought a cake, but after making making dinner and all that, and then putting it all on plates and making sure that everybody had enough and all that, I also cleaned dishes right after that. I kind of overdid it, and I started having really bad back pain, lower abdomen pain. It was just all that cramping again that I was feeling before. I was able to breathe through it and I was fine, but then at about that started happening about 11:30, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try and go to sleep. My fiance was playing video games. I told him, I was like, babe, I'm gonna try and get some sleep. He's like, okay, go ahead. He saw that I was in pain. He didn't want to mess with me. He wanted me to relax and rest. So I tried to sleep. I could not go to sleep. I was laying in bed. I actually had to stay sitting up because it was hurting really bad. And then finally at about 3 in the morning, I think it was, between 3 and 3:30, I went downstairs and my dad was awake. My dad sometimes can't sleep at night. There's sometimes where he just stays awake all night long till the very next day. And then the next day, like that night, he'll go to sleep. So because of that, he was awake. So I went up to him and I was like, Dad, I'm still having really bad pain. What should I do? Like, I was hunched over. It was bad. It was really bad. And so my dad was like, well, try and take a warm bath. Not like hot, but like a cool warm bath. I was like, okay. So I tried that. Laid in there for like 20, 30, 40 minutes. Got out. It went away. But then like maybe 5-10 minutes later, it like all came rushing back again. So I was just like, okay, obviously that didn't work. I came right upstairs. I tried laying down. I tried to sleep again. I fell asleep for like a few minutes and then woke back up again because the pain was just unbearable. So I got maybe 5 minutes of sleep, maybe. And then at about 10 o'clock or 10:30, I went downstairs and I was like, Dad, it hurts bad. I haven't slept at all. Technically, I didn't even eat anything. I was hungry, I was tired, I was exhausted. My dad's like, you know what, we're gonna take you in. Don't even call him, we're just gonna take you in. So they took me in. I got there, I told them what was going on. I was like, I'm having really bad abdomen pain. Like, as soon as I walked in, they noticed that I was in pain. They're like, okay, well, we'll call the nurses upstairs to come and get you, and you can sit down and just relax for a few minutes. So I sat down, relaxed. They came and grabbed me, and they took me upstairs. I got up there, they hooked me up to all the machines, they got an IV in me and all that fun stuff. I did not like getting the IV in, that hurt really bad. But they had asked me, they're like, well, how many weeks are you? I'm like, I'm 35 weeks and 2 days. They're like, really? I was like, yeah. And so they're like, okay. And I had the same nurses, so they kind of knew what was going on, but like, they wanted to know how many weeks I was. So I was like, I'm 36 weeks and 2 days. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, or no, I was 36 weeks and 1 day. And so because of that, they were like, well, we're gonna try and get you going into labor here. So they're like, well, obviously you're having contractions. We can see that you're having contractions. They wanted to try and see if my water would break. They wanted me to walk around the little area that I was in for 1 hour. So I did that. I walked around for 1 hour, which was a lot of steps, but I did it. You know, I walked around a lot. Went back to my room. They asked me if I wanted anything else to try, and I was like, well, can I try the yoga ball? They're like, okay, sure, no problem. So they went and grabbed a yoga ball. They brought it back to my room, and they told me, well, what we want you to do is we want you to roll your hips, you know, move back and forth, move forward, backwards. We don't want you actually bouncing on it because you can shake the baby that way and stuff like that, and then things could actually start going wrong. And I'm like, okay, no problem. They had me hooked all back up again, you know, the monitor for the baby. They had it all hooked up again. They were monitoring his heart and all that stuff. Everything was looking good. But my water hadn't broke yet, so I was dilating. I dilated to 4 centimeters. They're like, well, you dilated to 4, but your water hasn't broke yet. So we're gonna send you back out, and we want you to walk for 5 hours around our little square. So I was walking, and about not even an hour of walking around, I had to stop and pee. I was at this point in my pregnancy where I was constantly going pee. So I had to stop and I had to go to the bathroom. So I went into the bathroom that was right there on the corner. It was supposed to be for staff only, but I needed to go to the bathroom like really bad, and there wasn't another bathroom nearby. So I just went to that one. I walked in, went on the toilet, went to the bathroom, got up. I had wiped and all that stuff. Got up, washed my hands, and I walked out. Well, as I was walking out and I was continuing to walk around, I looked at my fiance and he's like, what? And I was like, I feel this dripping. It doesn't feel right. He's like, I don't see any dripping. I was like, okay. I was like, but I feel it. I was like, I feel the dripping of, like, what feels like pee almost. So he went and asked the nurse about it. You know, he told the nurse, she's feeling this dripping feeling. She wasn't, and, you know, he told him, she's not sure if her water broke a little or not. So they're like, okay, we'll have her walk back around and come back around. And when she comes back around, have her go into her room. Because he had stopped there and I just continued walking. Right when I turned the corner and I came back and I could see him, he told me, he's like, come back to the room. I was like, okay. So I went back to the room. The nurse was in there. She had a swab in her hand, and I was like, okay, what are you about to do with that? She's like, I have to stick this up there, swab, to see if your water broke. And so I was like, okay. So that's exactly what she did. She swabbed up there, and, you know, she's like, this is only going to take like 10 minutes, but you can go back out there and walk around. So, you know, I was like, okay. She's like, I'll come get you when, you know, I get the test results back. 10 minutes later, I was just coming around the corner to come back towards the rooms, and she's like, well, you can come back to your room now. I was like, okay, so I went back to my room, got back there, and she's like, well, your water broke, you're staying in the hospital. I was like, okay, cool. She's like, but it didn't break all the way, so we're gonna break it the rest of the way. So they used that little hook thingy, they hooked it, broke it the rest of the way, which I did feel the rest of the gushing. It felt so weird. And finally, I was going to be having my son. I was so excited, I couldn't wait. My dad's girlfriend couldn't wait. She wanted to be in the room with me when I was actually going to push. We thought it was going to happen during the daytime before she had to go to work. That wasn't the case. I didn't actually have him till about 2 a.m. But I had to do all kinds of crazy things in order to have him. They had to have me on my hands and knees because his heart rate was dropping and his head wasn't far enough down yet. But it was like he wanted to come out, so they were like, well, we want you to go, we want you to your hands and knees, and every time you have a contraction, we want you to squat. So that's exactly what I did. During this process, I was crying because I was in pain still, but I had epidural. At this point, I was already dilated 7 centimeters. I got it right when I hit 7 centimeters. And with the way that Wisconsin is if you hit 8 centimeters, you're not allowed to have epidural, because at that point you're too far dilated. You only have to dilate 2 more, and then the baby's head will start coming out. So in my case, I got it at 7 centimeters on the dot. And so of course they're getting all the stuff ready. They already had the stuff set aside for me, waiting for when I had asked for it. And as soon as I had a nurse come in, I immediately asked for it. I was like, I need an epidural. This pain is too much. And what they do is they drip it in. And so because they were dripping it in, it was so much easier. I was still feeling some of the contractions, but they weren't as bad. And so because of that, they were like, well, okay, let me know if you need anything else. They left the room. Finally, the doctor came back in, checked me again. They're like, well, the head's right there. It's time to push. At this point, it's already like 2 in the morning, 2 something in the morning. I had my son at 2:50 a.m. I had him at 2:50 a.m. and he was 6 pounds even, 0 ounces, 19 inches even. He was very tiny. They said that he wasn't considered a preemie, but his diapers had to be preemie, his clothes had to be preemie because his body stature was so tiny. But now he is 4 months. He weighs like 13.5 pounds, and he is my pride and joy now. Like, he is much bigger now, and I'm happy to have him in my life. He is my everything. Me and his daddy are planning on getting married. We were gonna go to Vegas and get married because that's kind of what we wanted to do, but then we were thinking about it and talking about it, and it's gonna cost at least $200 to have a wedding there, like to get married in one of those things there. So what we're gonna do is, instead, we're just gonna take $100, go to the courthouse, and get married that way, because that's how one of our family friends and her husband did it. They went to the courthouse and they got married that way. They only took like $100 to get in there. That paid for their license, the actual marriage part, and whatever else they needed for the stuff. So it was kind of nice to do all that. So for that to do all that. So that's what we're planning on doing eventually. My fiance just got a second job. He started today at 6 a.m. and I didn't want him to get a second job. I had been looking for a job, and I still kind of am, but I want to be able to work from home and help my dad with stuff, and because I have a little sister that's 4, and I want to help him out with her and all that stuff, and I can't do that if I'm out someplace working. So, and I don't want him to be taking care of my son and my little sister and my adopted brother. Like, I don't want my dad to be doing all that. That's doing too much for him. I don't want him doing that. So I had been trying to find a job where I can work from home, but it hasn't been working. So I've just been a stay-at-home mom, and I love it. I mean, I keep the house clean, I do the dishes, I make sure dinner is made for the other kids in the house and my dad, because he's got all these pills that he's got to take because he's got heart failure, which is what my tattoo is right there. It's for heart failure. But like, being 22 and being pregnant and having your mom and your grandma on your mom's side of the family disown you is the hardest thing, because right after I had him, she wanted to be there, but now she doesn't talk to me, she doesn't text me, she doesn't ask how I'm doing. She knows that I'm busy all the time, but she doesn't take the time out of her day to text me, call me, see how I'm doing, how the baby's doing, none of that. But she's constantly talking to my younger brother, who is 22. And I told my brother and my dad this. I told him, I was like, I kind of find it a little ridiculous how my mom says that she wants to be there for me and her grandson, but isn't actually there. So until then, she's just not going to be a part of his life. But my fiance's mom, she's there. She tries to get a hold of us when we're not busy, especially when his daddy ain't working. She tries to call us. I call her on my phone. We video chat all the time. She loves seeing him, and while I was pregnant, she was always wanting to see my belly, and it was nice to be able to have someone that cared enough to take time out of their day to see me or talk to me or see how I'm doing or see how the baby's doing, stuff like that. Like, my dad lived with me, so he always knew how the baby was doing. Like, my aunt and uncle on my mom's side of the family, both my uncles and my aunt and my cousins, they're all accepting of me having a baby. They're like, yeah, you're not financially stable enough to really take care of a baby, but it is your decision on if you want to keep the baby or not. You're not a teenager, you're an adult, you can make that decision on your own. And they're like, we should not have to make that decision for you. You know how to, you've taken care of kids before, you know how to do it. If you want to keep a baby, keep your baby, go ahead, keep your baby. They were happy for me. So because of all that, they occasionally ask me, hey, how you doing? When can we meet up? When can we, when can we see the baby again? They got to see the baby after he was 4 weeks. I mean, he was still pretty tiny. So, and I was trying to breastfeed with him, but because he was so tiny and his mouth was so tiny, he wouldn't latch on. He would latch on, drink a little bit, but then he had enough of that. He wanted a bottle, so I would give him a bottle, and then after that, he just didn't want to latch on anymore. So I tried pumping, and I wasn't getting enough. So after I realized that I wasn't getting enough, I stopped completely. I'm still producing milk there, but he drinks bottles. He drinks formula. I don't pump. But I mean, the formula has been doing pretty good for him. I mean, he's healthy and he's growing like he's supposed to and stuff like that. He's gonna be 5 months on January 28th, because he was born August 28th, and so he's about to be 5 months soon. But it's just, I wanted to update everybody because in my last ones you guys saw I was in high school and I looked completely different, and now I look different again because I'm a mom now. When you become a mom, your whole body changes basically. I still have my mommy belly, but right after having him I went from being this huge belly to just completely flat again. I weigh like 139 pounds, which I never thought I would ever see that. I have always been like between 100 and like 116. I've always been like that. Until I was about 8 or 9, then I was like 200 and something for like 8 or 9 for like an 8 or 9 year old. And then when I moved to Arizona, I lost all that weight. So, and now I've put on weight after having him. It's kind of nice to have that weight, but my hips hurt, my back hurts. It's just the normal stuff. But I figured I'd share my story with you guys and let you guys see the baby. Even though he's gnawing on my hand right now and he's drooling everywhere, he's teething. He's already got his bottom teeth already kind of popped up a little bit. But yeah, figured just let you guys see the baby and stuff for the first time. I'll probably post a video on YouTube of like all my belly pictures and stuff like that, and my progression from when I first found out all the way up to the very end. Because I have pictures all the way from when I first found out, which when I first found out I was only like 7 weeks, but from like there all the way up until I was 36 weeks to the day I had him, you guys will get to see that whole process. So I will probably post a video either later this week or next month if I'm not too busy. Alright.